Before we begin, a quick and important disclaimer. The following content is provided strictly for educational and entertainment purposes. It does not constitute legal, financial, or psychological advice. Divorce laws, asset division, and custody regulations vary significantly by state and jurisdiction. The emergence of online educational platforms in this space represents a cultural trend and should not be viewed as a substitute for the counsel of a licensed attorney, mediator, or certified financial planner. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and consult with qualified professionals regarding their specific circumstances. In a quiet suburban home in Ohio, a man sits at his kitchen table at 2 a.m., the glow of his laptop illuminating a face etched with a decade of fatigue. He isn't looking at old photos or scrolling through social media. He is enrolled in a digital course that promises to teach him the mechanics of a strategic exit. Across the country, in a high-rise in Seattle, a woman is watching a module on the psychology of documenting conflict, taking meticulous notes as if she were prepping for a board exam. This is the new reality of the American domestic landscape. We are currently witnessing a seismic shift where the most private, painful moments of human life, the dissolution of a marriage, have been systematized, digitized, and turned into a curriculum. For decades, the American divorce was a black box. You hired a lawyer, handed over a 5-figure retainer, and hoped the legal machinery would spit you out with some semblance of your life intact. But a massive cultural pivot is underway. We are seeing the rise of what is being termed Divorce University Online. It is an ecosystem of digital masterclasses, strategy webinars, and high-level coaching programs designed to treat a marital breakdown not just as a tragedy, but as a high-stakes negotiation that requires professional-grade preparation. The statistics tell a story of a nation in transition. While raw divorce rates have fluctuated, the complexity of the average American split has skyrocketed, driven by dual-income households, remote work arrangements, and the valuation of digital assets like cryptocurrency and social media influence. Today, we are diving deep into why the old way of lawyering up is failing the modern American family, and why thousands of people are paying for online schools to learn how to leave. We are going to deconstruct the cultural forces that made this inevitable, the specific data points that show a move away from traditional litigation, and the rise of the informed litigant who treats their divorce with the same tactical precision as a corporate merger. If you feel like the system is rigged against you, or if you simply want to understand the new rules of the 21st century household, this masterclass will provide the clarity the traditional legal system often hides behind a paywall of billable hours. To understand the emergence of these online universities, we must first look at the breakdown of the traditional American legal model. Historically, the legal gatekeeper model dominated. In this scenario, the attorney held all the information. If you wanted to know your rights regarding equity in a home or the nuances of best interests of the child standards, you had to pay for it by the minute. However, the internet dismantled the information monopoly. Just as WebMD changed the patient-doctor relationship and E-Trade changed the broker-investor dynamic, divorce university platforms are changing the client-lawyer power structure. We are seeing a cultural shift toward pro-se, or self-represented litigation, but with a twist. People aren't just walking into court blind. They are walking in with hundreds of hours of online training under their belts. They are learning how to file motions, how to cross-examine witnesses via Zoom, and how to use data analytics to track their spouse's spending habits. This isn't just about saving money. It is about a deep-seated American desire for agency. In a world where institutional trust is at an all-time low, many Americans believe that no one will fight for their future more effectively than they will, provided they have the right syllabus. Take, for example, the concept of the shadow divorce. This refers to the months or even years of preparation that now occur before a single legal document is filed. In these online universities, students are taught pre-filing hygiene. This involves auditing every digital footprint, from shared Amazon accounts to Nest thermostat logs that might prove residence or neglect. The depth of this preparation is staggering. Case studies from these online platforms show individuals who have used geolocation data from smart home devices to establish patterns of behavior long before their spouse even knew a divorce was being considered. This is a radical departure from the 1990s, where the surprise served papers were the starting gun. Now, by the time the papers are served, the educated spouse has often already completed a full semester of online training, organized their financial life into a searchable database, and mapped out 3 different contingency paths. Furthermore, we have to address the financial literacy gap that these online schools are filling. The American education system famously fails to teach basic financial management, but when a divorce hits, suddenly a person needs to understand the tax implications of a 401k versus a Roth IRA, the difference between marital and separate property in a community property state versus an equitable distribution state, and how to value a small business. Traditional attorneys are often not financial experts, they are legal experts. This gap created a massive market for online divorce financial analysts who sell courses specifically for the American middle class. These courses break down complex concepts like the Moore-Marsden formula for calculating interest in a home, or how to handle the tax trap of being awarded a house you can't afford to maintain. The cultural shift is also driven by the gamification of conflict. Some of these online platforms use leaderboards, badges, and community forums that resemble a high-level fitness app or a business incubator. This rebrands the divorce process from a shameful secret into a challenge to be conquered. This warrior ethos is particularly prevalent in the US market, where the narrative of the comeback is deeply ingrained in our DNA. We love a story of someone who was down and out, educated themselves, and won. These online universities tap into that American mythos. They tell the viewer, the system is a game, and we are giving you the cheat codes. But why now? Why didn't this happen in 2010? The answer lies in the intersection of the COVID-19 pandemic and the explosion of the creator economy. The pandemic forced the American court system to go virtual. Suddenly, the intimidating mahogany-paneled courtroom was replaced by a Microsoft Teams window. This lowered the barrier to entry for self-representation. At the same time, experts, retired judges, veteran mediators, and high-net-worth psychologists realized they could scale their knowledge. Instead of helping one person for $500 an hour, they could help 5,000 people for a one-time fee of $499. This transition has led to a tiered justice system. On one end, you have the ultra-wealthy who still employ white-shoe law firms. On the other, you have the indigent who rely on overwhelmed legal aid. The divorce university has become the survival kit for the American middle class. The people who make too much for free help, but not enough to spend $100,000 on a contested trial. This deep dive will explore how these digital platforms are not just teaching law. They are teaching a new form of domestic sovereignty. We will look at the specific modules being taught, the controversial strategy of de-escalation that is saving families thousands, and the darker side of how these tools can be weaponized in high-conflict scenarios. We are moving toward a future where the question isn't, who is your lawyer? But rather, where did you get your divorce education? This is the beginning of a massive institutional disruption, and the implications for the American family are profound. To truly grasp the magnitude of this shift, we have to look at the crumbling pillars of what was once considered the standard American domestic contract. For nearly a century, the social fabric of the United States was built on the concept of the breadwinner and the homemaker, a binary system that made the legal dissolution of marriage relatively straightforward. Asset division was a matter of splitting a house, a car, and perhaps a pension. But as we sit here in 2026, that binary has been shattered by the rise of the side hustle economy, remote work flexibility, and the democratization of investment. Imagine a 38-year-old software engineer in Austin, Texas, named David. David and his spouse, Sarah, have been married for 12 years. In the eyes of a 1990s divorce court, their assets would be easy to tally. But in 2026, David has a diversified portfolio of staked Ethereum, 3 fractionalized real estate holdings via a decentralized finance platform, and a burgeoning YouTube channel that generates passive ad revenue. Sarah, meanwhile, has spent the last 4 years building a high-ticket consulting business from her home office, utilizing a complex web of offshore contractors and proprietary software. When David and Sarah decide to part ways, a traditional family law attorney, billed at $450 an hour, might spend 30 hours just trying to understand the login credentials for their digital wallets. This is where the emergence of Divorce University Online becomes a mechanical necessity rather than just a trend. Historical trends show that the legal system is often 10 to 15 years behind technological advancement. The online divorce university model bridges this gap by offering modules specifically on digital asset discovery and the valuation of intangible intellectual property. These platforms teach people like David and Sarah how to use forensic software tools that were previously only available to elite private investigators. They are learning how to track blockchain transactions and how to value a social media following as a marital asset. This level of self-education is fundamentally altering the potential outcomes of mediation. Instead of a judge making a broad-stroke decision based on outdated precedents, the informed litigants are presenting pre-calculated, data-driven settlement proposals that a traditional court wouldn't even know how to construct. This leads us to the first major pillar of the Divorce University curriculum, the systematic audit of the modern household. In these online courses, students are walked through a step-by-step process that resembles a corporate forensic audit. Stage 1 of this audit is often referred to as the digital sweep. In 2026, the average American home is filled with Internet of Things devices. We are talking about smart refrigerators that log grocery habits, doorbell cameras that track every entry and exit, and shared cloud storage that contains a decade of metadata. These online platforms provide checklists for securing digital privacy. They explain the historical trends of how metadata has been used in custody disputes, such as a GPS log from a vehicle proving a parent was at a bar when they claimed to be at a child's soccer game. Step 2 involves the reconstruction of the financial timeline. Divorce universities emphasize that the person with the best records usually has the most leverage. Students are taught how to export 5 years of bank statements into spreadsheet software and use AI-driven categorization tools to highlight anomalies. This is a far cry from the old days of boxes filled with paper receipts. Now, the online curriculum teaches you how to run a regression analysis on your household spending. If your spouse claims they cannot afford child support, but your data-driven audit shows a 20% increase in discretionary spending on luxury goods over the last 18 months, you have moved from an emotional argument to a mathematical one. Case studies from these online academies frequently highlight the shift from adversarial litigation to what is called cooperative decoupling strategy. Consider the story of a couple in Georgia who used an online platform to navigate their split in early 2026. Instead of spending $50,000 on 2 separate lawyers to fight over a $20,000 equity gap in their home, they both enrolled in the same online masterclass. They treated the divorce like a shared project. The course provided them with templates for a parenting plan that accounted for their specific remote work schedules and a neutral financial worksheet that calculated the tax implications of their property sale. By the time they reached a mediator, 85% of the work was done. The potential outcome was not just a cheaper divorce, but a functional post-divorce relationship. This is the ultimate promise of these platforms: the preservation of emotional capital through the application of intellectual rigor. We must also examine the cultural psychological shift. For decades, the American psyche viewed divorce as a failure of character. Today, the 2026 perspective is shifting toward viewing it as a logistical transition. Online divorce universities lean heavily into this by employing conflict coaches and divorce doulas, who provide modules on emotional regulation and strategic communication. They teach students how to use the BIF method: brief, informative, firm, and friendly when communicating with an ex-spouse. This isn't just about being nice. It is about reducing the billable hours of an attorney. Every angry text message that requires a lawyer to intervene is a $500 mistake. By teaching people how to communicate like professionals, these online universities are effectively defunding the high-conflict legal industry. The depth of these programs goes even further into the realm of post-divorce architecture. Many of these online universities don't stop when the decree is signed. They offer secondary courses on solo parenting logistics and re-establishing individual credit in a volatile economy. They recognize that the American consumer in 2026 is looking for a holistic solution. They don't just want to be unmarried, they want to be successful as a single entity. They are learning how to navigate the specific tax filings for head of household and how to protect their future earnings from secondary claims. But as these individuals become more educated, a new tension is rising between the informed litigant and the traditional bar association. Many states are seeing a pushback from legal professionals who argue that these online universities are practicing law without a license. This creates a fascinating legal gray area. Is a pre-recorded video explaining how to calculate child support legal advice, or is it legal information? This distinction is the battleground for the next decade of American family law. As we look closer, we see that the emergence of these platforms is actually forcing the legal system to evolve. Some forward-thinking firms are now unbundling their services, offering to simply review the work that a client has already done via an online university, rather than handling the entire case. As we continue this deep dive, we have to ask ourselves, what happens when the spouse on the other side of the table is also a graduate of an online divorce university? We are entering an era of symmetrical information, where both parties are armed with the same tactics, the same data analysis tools, and the same psychological frameworks. When both sides know exactly how the game is played, the game itself changes. It moves from a battle of attrition to a battle of efficiency. However, there is a looming shadow over this digital revolution. While these tools empower the many, they also provide a dangerous roadmap for those with malicious intent. In the wrong hands, the same digital sweep, used to find hidden assets, can be used for surveillance and control. As we move into the next part of this masterclass, we will uncover the specific tactics used in electronic warfare within modern American divorces, and how the very tools meant to liberate you can be used to trap you in a cycle of digital litigation. If you think a divorce is just about signatures on a page, you are missing the most dangerous part of the 2026 landscape: the battle for the digital soul of the family. We are going to look at the dark side of Divorce University, including the emergence of AI-generated evidence and the terrifying reality of deepfake testimony in family court. The shift from traditional legal skirmishes to digital warfare has introduced a concept that was science fiction only a decade ago: the manipulation of reality itself within the courtroom. As we navigate through 2026, the curriculum of many online divorce universities has been forced to include an entire semester on digital authenticity and forensic verification. This isn't just about checking bank statements anymore. It is about verifying that the person speaking on a recorded Zoom call is actually your spouse, and not an AI-generated construct designed to commit character assassination. Imagine a high-stakes custody hearing in a family court in Phoenix. A father named Marcus is presented with an audio recording by his spouse's legal team. In the recording, Marcus sounds aggressive, making threats that would immediately terminate his chances of joint legal custody. The voice is indistinguishable from his own. The cadence, the specific regional accent, even the background noise of his favorite coffee shop is present. In a pre-2026 world, this would be the end of the line for Marcus. However, because Marcus enrolled in a specialized online litigation masterclass, he knew exactly how to respond. He didn't just deny it. He requested a digital forensic audit of the file's metadata and an analysis of the spectral frequency. The online course he took had already taught him about the historical trends of cheap audio cloning software. He was prepared to prove that the recording lacked the natural biological artifacts found in human speech. This scenario highlights the darker side of the divorce university trend: the arms race. As one side learns how to protect their assets, the other side learns how to manufacture liability. We are seeing the rise of what experts call artificial evidence. Online platforms are now providing step-by-step guides on how to spot deepfakes in domestic litigation. They teach students to look for the digital uncanny valley, tiny glitches in eye movement, or the lack of micro-expressions in video evidence. They provide tutorials on how to use blockchain-based timestamping for all personal communications to ensure that an ex-spouse cannot later claim a message was altered or fabricated. The cultural shift here is a move from trust to verification. In the 20th century, a judge might weigh the credibility of a witness based on their demeanor on the stand. In 2026, many American litigants are being taught by online academies that demeanor is data. They are learning to record every interaction using encrypted apps that automatically log the location, time, and device ID. This creates a verifiable life log. Case studies show that when both parties know that every interaction is being digitally notarized in real time, the potential outcomes for conflict reduction are significant. However, the psychological cost is a state of constant surveillance within the home. Let's look at the specific data points regarding the digital paper trail. Online divorce schools are now teaching a technique called metadata harvesting. Every photo your spouse takes and sends to you contains a treasure trove of information: the exact GPS coordinates of where it was taken, the altitude, and the technical specifications of the camera. Historical trends in 2024 and 2025 showed a spike in cases where hidden vacations or secret purchases were discovered simply because one spouse didn't know how to scrub the EXIF data from a photo of a sunset. In 2026, the Divorce University curriculum includes a deep dive into digital hygiene, teaching students how to disappear from shared data ecosystems without triggering legal red flags for spoliation of evidence. Spoliation, the intentional destruction of evidence, is a major hurdle in the online education space. If a student learns in an online course how to delete a hard drive, they might inadvertently commit a crime. Therefore, the sophisticated 2026 masterclasses focus on defensive documentation. They teach you how to create a mirror drive of all shared family data the moment a split becomes a possibility. This is a step-by-step process. You identify the central hub of the family's digital life, usually a shared cloud account or a home server, and you use forensic imaging software to create a bit-for-bit copy. The curriculum emphasizes that you don't look at the data yet. You simply preserve it so that your spouse cannot accidentally delete the history of their crypto trading account or their secret communications. This leads us to the emergence of cyber-private investigators as guest lecturers in these online universities. They break down the mechanics of the Internet of Things as a witness. Consider an imagine-if scenario where a spouse claims they have been home every night at 6 p.m. to care for the children. In 2026, a savvy litigant who has studied at a digital divorce academy can subpoena the data from the smart water meter. If the water usage shows no showers, no dishwasher cycles, and no toilet flushes between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. for 3 months, the home every night defense collapses under the weight of utility data. This is the level of granularity being taught. It is no longer about he said, she said. It is about he said, the refrigerator said. But there is an even more complex layer: the algorithmic bias in family court. Some online courses are now analyzing the sentencing and disposition patterns of specific judges. By using large-scale data scraping of public court records, these universities can tell a student, Judge Smith in District 4 historically favors the primary earner in 65% of cases, but is extremely sensitive to evidence of digital stalking. This allows the student to tailor their educational strategy to the specific audience of the court. It is essentially legal Moneyball. You are using statistics to determine which arguments have the highest probability of success based on historical data. The ethical implications of this are staggering. Does this level of preparation create an unfair advantage for the spouse who can afford the premium tier of a divorce university? In many ways, yes. It creates a cognitive divide. We are seeing cases where one spouse is still playing by the rules of 2015, hiring a generalist lawyer and hoping for the best, while the other spouse is operating like a high-level intelligence agency. This disparity often leads to settlements that are technically legal, but morally questionable, as the undereducated spouse is outmaneuvered at every digital turn. Furthermore, we must address the automated discovery phase. In 2026, some online platforms offer AI tools that can scan 10,000 pages of bank statements in seconds to find lifestyle leaks. If a spouse is claiming a low income but their Venmo history shows frequent payments for high-end detailing of a car that isn't on the marital asset list, the AI flags it immediately. This level of automated scrutiny makes it nearly impossible to hide assets in the modern American economy, provided the other side knows which tools to use. As we wrap up this deep dive into the digital battlefield, we have to look at the human element that is often lost in the data. The online university model can turn a person into a cold, calculating litigator, but it can also leave them emotionally bankrupt. The next part of our masterclass will shift focus from the hardware and software to the software of the mind. We are going to explore how these online platforms are teaching neuro-linguistic programming and behavioral economics to influence mediation sessions. We will look at how the presentation of self in a 2026 divorce is being scripted by psychologists to trigger specific empathetic responses from judges and mediators. If you think your truth is enough to win in court, you are ignoring the psychological theater that has become the hallmark of the modern American divorce. We are going to pull back the curtain on the vulnerability scripting that is now a mandatory module for high-stakes litigants. The concept of vulnerability scripting sounds like an oxymoron. How can something as raw as human heartbreak be reduced to a teleprompter-style curriculum? In the high-stakes environment of 2026, the answer lies in the intersection of behavioral economics and courtroom optics. Online divorce universities have pioneered a module known as tactical vulnerability. This is the calculated presentation of emotional distress, designed to align with the psychological biases of a judge or a mediator. We are moving away from the era of the stoic, aggressive litigant and into an era where showing the right kind of pain, at the right time, can lead to more favorable potential outcomes in custody and spousal support. Imagine a high-achieving executive in Denver named Elena. For 15 years, Elena has been the primary breadwinner, a woman who prides herself on her composure and ironclad logic. In a traditional 20th century divorce, Elena would walk into court looking like a shark. But her online divorce coach, a former behavioral psychologist, tells her that in 2026, looking like a shark is a liability. The curriculum she follows suggests a pivot. She is coached on how to articulate the invisible labor she performed, the mental load of scheduling pediatrician appointments, the emotional cost of being the domestic anchor, while managing a multi-million-dollar budget. This is not about lying. It is about the strategic curation of truth. The course teaches her how to use soft power. Instead of attacking her spouse's financial negligence, she is taught to express sadness over the loss of the shared dream they once had. This shift in tone is designed to bypass the defensive mechanisms of the court, making her appear as a relatable human being rather than a corporate entity. This methodology is rooted in the study of historical trends regarding judicial empathy. Data gathered from thousands of family law cases suggests that judges, being human, are susceptible to narrative framing. If a litigant is framed as the victim of a broken promise, rather than a participant in a legal dispute, the court's discretionary power often leans toward restorative justice. Online divorce universities have turned this data into a step-by-step framework called the narrative arc of the litigant. Students are taught to view their court appearances as three-act plays. Act 1 is the establishment of the stable past. Act 2 is the introduction of the disruptive event. Act 3 is the vision for a stable, independent future. By providing a clear, logical path toward resolution, the student becomes the judge's greatest ally in closing the case. The curriculum goes deeper into the mechanics of neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. This involves the use of specific language patterns to build rapport and influence the subconscious mind of the listener. For example, students are taught to use we language when discussing the children, even when the relationship is adversarial. Phrases like, "Our shared priority is the children's stability," are used as linguistic anchors. This subtly signals to the mediator that the student is the more reasonable, collaborative party. Case studies from 2025 show that litigants who utilize these specific rapport-building techniques were 30% more likely to reach a settlement in the first 2 rounds of mediation than those who use traditional adversarial language. Furthermore, we must examine the role of behavioral economics in the divorce university curriculum. Specifically, the concept of loss aversion. Humans are neurologically wired to fear losing what they have more than they value gaining something new. Online platforms teach students how to frame their settlement offers through this lens. Instead of saying, "I want 50% of the house," a student is taught to say, "By agreeing to this specific division, you avoid the potential loss of the entire property's value to market volatility and legal fees." By framing the settlement as a way to avoid a greater loss, the student increases the statistical probability of the other party saying yes. It is a masterclass in the psychology of negotiation, stripped of its legal jargon and focused entirely on the machinery of human decision-making. This level of psychological preparation also extends to the digital persona. In 2026, every judge and mediator has access to the internet, and while they are supposed to remain impartial, the Google search bias is a real phenomenon. Online divorce schools now include modules on digital reputation management during litigation. Students are taught how to soften their social media profiles months before filing. This involves a curated stream of content that emphasizes family values, community involvement, and a lack of extravagant spending. It is a slow-burn strategy designed to ensure that if a judge happens to see the student's digital footprint, it reinforces the vulnerability script being presented in the courtroom. Step by step, these courses walk students through the process of cleaning the feed. Step 1. Audit all tagged photos from the last 3 years. Step 2. Deactivate or privatize accounts that show high discretionary spending. Step 3. Begin a consistent low-frequency posting schedule of neutral positive content. This is a level of forensic image crafting that was once reserved for politicians and celebrities, but is now a standard tool for the American middle-class litigant. However, there is a counter-strategy being taught as well, the detection of deception. As more people use these scripts, the opposing side is learning how to spot them. Online academies are now teaching micro-expression analysis to help litigants and their attorneys identify when a spouse is following a pre-written emotional script. They look for the duper's delight, a brief, involuntary smile that occurs when someone thinks they have successfully deceived another person. They also look for cognitive overload, when a person's story becomes too complex to maintain because it isn't rooted in genuine experience. The courtroom is becoming a theater of high-level psychological warfare, where both sides are trying to outscript the other. Imagine an imagine-if scenario where both parties in a divorce have taken the same high-level online course. They both walk into mediation using the same NLP anchors, the same loss aversion framing, and the same curated vulnerability. What happens when the scripts collide? We are seeing the emergence of script neutralization. This is where the mediator, recognizing the patterns of an online curriculum, has to strip away the curated layers to find the actual needs beneath. It is a fascinating evolution of the legal process. The very tools meant to give an individual an edge are becoming so prevalent that they are canceling each other out, forcing a return to raw, unscripted negotiation, but with a much higher level of baseline knowledge for everyone involved. The divorce university model is also addressing the post-settlement psychology. Many people win the legal battle but lose the emotional war. They are left with the assets they wanted but no sense of how to move forward. Sophisticated 2026 platforms are now offering identity reintegration modules. These courses use principles of cognitive behavioral therapy to help students detach their self-worth from their marital status. They provide a step-by-step guide to the first 90 days of singlehood, covering everything from the logistics of moving to the psychological impact of secondary loss, the loss of friends, in-laws, and social status. As we look at the totality of this psychological shift, we see that the American divorce has been transformed into a professionalized transition. It is no longer a chaotic explosion. It is a managed project. But as we move into the next phase of this masterclass, we have to look at the most controversial development of all: the rise of the AI judge. In several jurisdictions in 2026, small claims domestic disputes are being settled not by humans, but by algorithms trained on millions of case files. We are going to explore how Divorce University is preparing students to win the algorithm. We will look at the specific data input strategies that can sway an AI-driven mediation, and the terrifying question of what happens when we remove human empathy from the scales of justice entirely. If you think a computer can't decide the fate of your family, you aren't paying attention to the pilot programs currently rolling out in 3 major U.S. states. The integration of algorithmic decision-making into the American family court system is no longer a dystopian prophecy. As of 2026, it is a functioning administrative reality in specific pilot jurisdictions across California, New Jersey, and Utah. These systems, often referred to as Automated Dispute Resolution or ADR interfaces, were initially designed to clear the massive backlog of cases left behind in the mid-2020s staffing crises. However, for the students of Divorce University, these algorithms represent a new kind of gatekeeper that must be understood with mathematical precision. In these jurisdictions, for low-asset or uncontested matters, a human judge may only spend 90 seconds reviewing a recommendation generated by a machine. This has birthed a specialized sector within online divorce education: algorithmic optimization. Imagine a father in Newark named Robert. Robert is facing a machine-led mediation session. The algorithm, fed by decades of historical trends and case law data, is programmed to look for specific markers of stability and risk. Unlike a human judge who might be swayed by a trembling voice or a sincere look in the eyes, the algorithm looks for data consistency. Robert's online course has taught him that the machine prioritizes high-frequency, low-conflict data points. This means that instead of providing one long, emotional statement about his dedication to his children, Robert is coached to input a high volume of verifiable digital logs, consistent pickup and drop-off times recorded via GPS, a steady history of school tuition payments, and digital communication threads that show a 0% instance of high-intensity keywords. In the eyes of the algorithm, Robert is not a person, he is a data set. By optimizing that data set, Robert significantly shifts the potential outcomes of his custody recommendation. Step by step, Divorce University students are learning the mechanics of data entry strategy for AI mediation. The first step is keyword hygiene. Algorithms are trained to flag high-conflict language. Words associated with blame, anger, or accusation are weighted negatively. Students are taught to replace these with collaborative, forward-looking terminology. Instead of submitting a document that says "my spouse refused to let me see the kids," the student is taught to write, "The current schedule presents an opportunity for optimized parenting time adjustment to better serve the minor's developmental needs." The machine reads this as a low-conflict, solution-oriented input, which triggers a more favorable categorization in the software's logic tree. The second step involves the quantifiable proof of lifestyle. The algorithm is often tasked with suggesting child support or alimony amounts based on the lifestyle established during the marriage. Online courses now provide templates for students to create what is essentially a digital balance sheet that an AI can parse in milliseconds. They teach you how to categorize every line item of your shared bank statements into machine-readable tags. If you can prove, through a clean data export, that your discretionary spending was consistently lower than your spouse's while maintaining the majority of household responsibilities, the AI's cost of living assessment will likely favor your position. This is the birth of the narrativist code. You are essentially programming the conclusion you want the judge to reach. Case studies from early 2026 show that litigants who use these AI optimization techniques had an 80% higher rate of having their machine-generated recommendations adopted by the court without modification. This is a staggering statistic that points to a future where the ability to speak the language of the machine determines the quality of your post-divorce life. This is why Divorce University Online is becoming a multi-billion-dollar industry in America. It is no longer just about knowing the law. It is about knowing the software that interprets the law. However, the emergence of the AI judge has also created a new form of digital redlining. If you do not have access to the high-level data cleaning tools taught in these online masterclasses, you are at a distinct disadvantage. Historical trends suggest that unoptimized data often leads to harsher machine-driven recommendations. For example, an AI might misinterpret a period of unemployment as a permanent lack of earning capacity if the data isn't contextualized with the right legal tags. Divorce University is stepping in to provide that context, teaching students how to use supplemental data, such as industry growth charts or job market volatility indexes, to influence the AI's predictive modeling of their future income. Beyond the algorithm, we must discuss the rise of the virtual courtroom persona. In 2026, most initial hearings are conducted via high-definition video conferencing. Online divorce schools have responded by hiring cinematographers and lighting experts to teach litigants how to present themselves on screen. They teach the rule of thirds for camera framing, the use of neutral, high-value background staging, and even the psychological impact of specific colors on a webcam. A student is taught that wearing navy blue on a 4K camera signal can project authority and calm, while a stark white background can make the litigant appear washed out and vulnerable. This is not about vanity. It is about the reality that in a digital-first legal system, your video feed is your physical presence. We also see the emergence of shadow AI in these online courses. These are personal AI assistants trained specifically on a student's case. The assistant runs thousands of simulations of the upcoming mediation, playing the role of the opposing counsel and the mediator. It analyzes the student's past emails and text messages to find potential vulnerabilities before the other side does. If the personal AI finds a text message from 3 years ago that could be interpreted as a threat, the course then provides a module on how to preemptively address that evidence in a way that minimizes its impact. It is a form of digital fire drilling. By the time the student gets to the actual hearing, they have already lived through every possible permutation of the conflict in a virtual environment. But what about the ethical vacuum created when we delegate family ethics to a processor? This is a core debate within the Divorce University forums. While the tools provide efficiency, they also remove the nuance of human grace. A machine doesn't understand the cultural weight of a family heirloom or the emotional significance of a specific neighborhood. It only understands market value and proximity. These online schools are now teaching students how to bridge this gap by injecting human-centric data hooks into their filings, specific phrases and data points that force the algorithm to flag the issue for human review. They are learning how to break the machine's flow when the machine is moving toward a conclusion that is technically correct but morally bankrupt. As we continue to peel back the layers of this masterclass, we have to look at the financial architecture that makes all of this possible. We are talking about the emergence of divorce litigation funding. In 2026, third-party investors are now treating American divorces like high-yield startups. They will pay for your Divorce University tuition, your AI tools, and your forensic auditors in exchange for a percentage of the final settlement. We are going to explore the mechanics of this equity-based divorce and how it is turning the dissolution of marriage into a speculative asset class. If you think your divorce is just between you and your spouse, wait until you see the list of investors who might have a stake in your outcome. In the next part, we dive into the world of divorce hedge funds and the secret contracts being signed in living rooms across the United States. The financialization of domestic dissolution has reached a point where the American living room has effectively become a boardroom for private equity. As we move deeper into 2026, the emergence of divorce litigation funding, or DLF, is rewriting the economic rules of how families break apart. Traditionally, if one spouse controlled the liquid assets, the other was often forced into a predatory settlement simply because they could not afford to keep the lights on during a 3-year legal battle. Online divorce universities have recognized this systemic imbalance and have integrated entire modules on how to pitch your case to external investors. This is the world of the divorce hedge fund, a specialized pool of capital that treats a high-stakes matrimonial dispute as a structured settlement with a predictable internal rate of return. Imagine a woman in Chicago named Claire. Claire has been married to a high-frequency trader for 20 years. When the marriage ends, she discovers that while they lived in a $10 million penthouse, she has no access to the primary investment accounts, which are tied up in complex offshore trusts. In 2015, Claire would have been at the mercy of a modest court-ordered temporary support payment. In 2026, Claire logs into a divorce university portal that connects her with a litigation strategist. Together, they build an investment prospectus. This document doesn't just list her grievances. It outlines the potential value of the marital estate, the historical trends of asset recovery in Cook County, and the specific legal theories they will use to pierce the corporate veil of those offshore trusts. Within 72 hours, a private funding group reviews the data and agrees to front $500,000 for her legal fees and living expenses. In exchange, they take a 15% stake in the final settlement. This is the shift from debt to equity in the American household. These funders are not lenders, they are partners. Because they only get paid if there is a successful recovery, they are incentivized to provide Claire with the highest level of resources. They don't just give her money. They give her access to their own network of forensic accountants, cybersecurity experts, and top-tier mediators who are also graduates of the same online university systems. This creates a formidable alliance that can go toe-to-toe with the wealthiest primary earners in the country. The potential outcome is a leveling of the playing field that was previously unimaginable for the non-moneyed spouse. The curriculum for pitching your divorce is a step-by-step masterclass in corporate finance. Step 1 is the asset mapping phase. Students are taught how to create a high-level summary of the marital pie, including non-traditional assets like unvested stock options, intellectual property, and even the future earnings potential of a professional degree, which is a recognized asset in certain U.S. jurisdictions. Step 2 is the risk assessment. Investors want to know the likelihood of a settlement versus a trial. Online platforms provide data on the success rates of specific legal arguments, allowing the student to show the investor a probability-weighted outcome. Step 3 is the budgeting stage. Just like a startup, the litigant must present a burn rate. How much money is needed per month for legal fees, expert witnesses, and household maintenance to ensure the case reaches its maximum valuation? Historical trends from 2024 to 2026 show that litigation funding has expanded from the ultra-wealthy down to the upper-middle class. We are seeing funds that specialize in cases with marital estates valued between $2 million and $5 million. These funds use automated underwriting software to scan court filings and identify high-probability cases. If you are a student of a major online divorce university, your case file is already formatted in a way that these AI underwriters can easily digest. You are, in effect, making your divorce investor-ready from day one. However, this financial injection comes with a new set of secret contracts. These agreements often include control provisions. Imagine an imagine-if scenario where an investor has put $300,000 into your case. A year later, your ex-spouse offers a settlement that covers your needs, but doesn't provide the high return the investor was looking for. Under some of these secret contracts, the investor may have the right to advise against settlement, pushing you toward a trial to maximize their profit. This introduces a third party with a purely financial motive into the most intimate of human conflicts. The online university curriculum has had to pivot to include investor relations modules, teaching students how to manage these partnerships without losing their own autonomy. We must also look at the rise of crowd-funded divorces. In 2026, several decentralized platforms allow individuals to pool small amounts of capital to fund a stranger's legal battle. Usually, these are cases with a high social justice component, perhaps a stay-at-home parent who was left with nothing after decades of service. These platforms use a social proof model where the community votes on which cases to fund based on the evidence presented. This turns the divorce into a public narrative, where the litigant must maintain a public persona that appeals to the crowd. Divorce University provides the media training for this, teaching students how to tell their story in a way that generates both empathy and investment. The step-by-step process of going public involves creating a digital dossier. First, the student curates a verified timeline of the marriage, backed by the verifiable life logs we discussed in previous parts. Second, they produce a video appeal that outlines their goals, not just for themselves, but for the precedent their case might set. Third, they offer tiers of return to their micro-investors. While these are not get-rich-quick schemes, they are marketed as impact investing, with a potential for a modest financial upside once the court orders the distribution of assets. Case studies in the US show that these crowd-funded cases often settle faster. Why? Because the opposing spouse realizes they aren't just fighting one person. They are fighting a well-funded army of thousands who are watching every move in the public square. The shame factor is a powerful tool in the 2026 legal arsenal. If a high-profile executive is being sued by a spouse whose legal fees are being paid by 5,000 angry Twitter users, the executive's board of directors may step in to force a quiet, generous settlement to protect the company's stock price. This leads us to the institutionalization of the split. We are seeing the birth of divorce insurance products. In 2026, some couples are taking out insurance policies at the time of marriage that pay out for divorce university tuition and legal fees in the event of a filing. These policies require annual domestic audits to stay active, where the couple must submit to mediation check-ins and financial transparency. The online universities are the primary providers of these audits. This creates a managed marriage model, where the divorce is pre-funded and pre-planned, stripping away the financial terror that traditionally kept people in unhealthy situations. But as we look at this landscape of hedge funds, crowdfunders, and insurance policies, we have to confront the ultimate question. What happens to the concept of family when it is treated as a liquidatable asset? Are we creating a more just system by providing resources, or are we incentivizing conflict by turning it into a profit center? This tension is the core of the 2026 cultural shift. In the next part of this masterclass, we will explore the global divorce arbitrage. We are going to look at how Americans are using international law and jurisdictional shopping to move their cases to the most favorable online courts in the world. We will look at the rise of the digital nomad divorce and how the concept of a home state is becoming obsolete in a world of borderless digital education. If you think your local court has the final say, you are still living in 2020. The future of your family might be decided by a server in a country you've never visited. The concept of the home court advantage is dying a rapid death in the digital age. As we move deeper into 2026, the curriculum of Divorce University has expanded to include a high-level module known as jurisdictional arbitrage. In the traditional model, if you lived in Florida, you were bound by Florida's laws on equitable distribution. If you lived in California, you were subject to community property rules. But in a world where the American workforce has gone fully remote and assets exist in the cloud, the physical location of your primary residence is becoming a secondary factor. We are seeing the rise of the digital nomad divorce, where savvy litigants are strategically establishing residency in jurisdictions, both domestic and international, that offer the most favorable potential outcomes for their specific financial profile. Imagine a specialized consultant named Thomas. Thomas works for a Silicon Valley firm but has spent the last 3 years working from various airbnbs in Mexico, Portugal, and the mountains of Colorado. His spouse, Maria, has been doing the same. When their marriage reaches its breaking point in early 2026, the question is not just how to split the assets, but where the split should legally occur. Thomas, a high-tier student of an online divorce academy, has been tracking his physical presence via a residency optimization app for 18 months. He understands that by spending a specific number of days in a jurisdiction with more favorable laws regarding the duration of spousal support, he can fundamentally alter the financial trajectory of his post-divorce life. This is not about evading the law. It is about choosing which law applies to you. The step-by-step process of jurisdictional shopping is now a standard part of the Advanced Divorce University syllabus. Step 1 is the multi-state asset audit. This involves identifying where every major asset is technically located. Is the primary brokerage account in a New York-based firm? Is the real estate held in a Wyoming LLC? Is the crypto wallet associated with a residency in Puerto Rico? Step 2 is the residency optimization phase. Students are taught how to legally establish a domicile in states like Nevada or South Dakota, which have specific laws designed to protect individual wealth or offer faster processing times. Step 3 is the filing race. In many jurisdictions, the first person to file sets the venue. The online curriculum teaches you how to prepare your filing package in multiple jurisdictions simultaneously, so you can execute the moment the residency requirements are met. Historical trends show that this was once a tactic reserved for the billionaire class. Think of high-profile cases where celebrities moved to London or Switzerland to take advantage of different legal standards. But in 2026, the democratization of this knowledge through online universities has brought it to the American upper middle class. We are seeing a surge in divorce tourism, where individuals relocate for 6 months to a year specifically to access a legal system that aligns with their goals. This has created a market for justice, where states and even countries are competing to attract these high-net-worth filings by offering streamlined digital courts and specialized master-led mediation. Case studies in 2026 highlight the emergence of e-residency programs. Some Baltic nations and Caribbean territories have launched digital family courts that allow non-residents to settle domestic disputes under their laws, provided the marriage contract was registered there, or the assets are held in their digital banks. For an American couple with a purely digital footprint, no children, no physical real estate, and all income derived from global consulting, these international digital courts offer a level of privacy and efficiency that the backlogged U.S. state courts simply cannot match. Divorce University provides the international liaison modules to help students navigate the Hague Convention and the complexities of ensuring these foreign decrees are recognized back in the United States. But this borderless approach introduces a new level of geofencing warfare. If one spouse is trying to move the case to Nevada, while the other is trying to keep it in New York, the litigation becomes a battle over the center of gravity of the marriage. Online academies are teaching students how to create presence data to prove where the marriage actually lived. This includes mapping out where groceries were bought, where the kids went to school, and even where the family dog was registered. In 2026, a veterinarian's records in Brooklyn can be the key piece of evidence that prevents a spouse from moving a case to a tax haven jurisdiction. Furthermore, we must address the algorithmic jurisdictional matching. Some online platforms now offer tools where you can input your entire financial and family profile, and the AI will rank every U.S. state and 5 foreign countries based on the historical trends of their case law. The tool might tell you, based on your high income and the short duration of your marriage, you have a 72% higher probability of a favorable outcome in New Hampshire than in Massachusetts. This turns the legal system into a high-stakes game of select your adventure. The online university doesn't just teach you the law, it teaches you how to shop for the law, step by step. These platforms are also training legal navigators who specialize in hybrid divorce. This is where different parts of the divorce are handled in different places. For example, the custody of the children might be settled in the home state to ensure stability, but the division of a complex international business might be carved out and settled via private arbitration in a neutral third country jurisdiction. This level of complexity requires a general contractor mindset, which is exactly what Divorce University is training its students to adopt. You aren't just a litigant. You are the CEO of your own dissolution. Imagine if scenario where a couple's primary asset is a joint venture based in a metaverse environment. In 2026, where is that asset located? Does the physical location of the servers matter, or the location of the founders? Online divorce schools are currently debating the lex loci digitalis, the law of the digital place. They are preparing students for the first wave of virtual asset repartition cases, where the court might order the transfer of digital land or in-game revenue streams. The step-by-step detail of these modules includes how to write smart contracts for settlements that automatically distribute funds the moment the decree is digitally signed by a judge. As we look at this global shift, we see the traditional power of the local judge being diluted. We are moving toward a global standard of domestic law, driven not by treaties, but by the fact that everyone is learning from the same 5 or 6 major online universities. These platforms are effectively creating a common law of the internet for divorce. When students from Seattle, Miami, and London are all taking the same strategic negotiation course, they begin to use the same language and expect the same outcomes. This is a bottom-up restructuring of the legal world. But as the geography of divorce vanishes, a new and more personal boundary is being drawn: the biological boundary. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to explore one of the most sensitive and complex topics in the 2026 landscape: the battle over genetic assets. We will look at how Divorce University is teaching students to navigate the legal status of frozen embryos, genetic data, and even the commercial rights to a family's DNA sequence. If you think the fight over the house was intense, wait until you see the step-by-step strategy for the DNA custody battle. We are entering a territory where the code of life meets the code of law, and the online universities are the only ones with the map. The intersection of biotechnology and matrimonial law has created a new frontier that the American legal system is only beginning to categorize. In 2026, the concept of a marital asset has moved beyond the tangible and even beyond the digital, deep into the biological. This is the era of the DNA custody battle, a specialized track within the Divorce University curriculum that addresses the ownership, control, and commercialization of genetic material. As late-stage reproductive technology becomes a standard part of the American family-building process, the dissolution of a marriage now involves the high-stakes division of cryopreserved embryos, genetic sequencing data, and even the future rights to a family's lineage. Imagine a couple in Boston named Sarah and James. After 5 years of struggling with fertility, they successfully cryopreserved 8 high-grade embryos. During that process, they also opted for full genome sequencing to identify potential health markers for their future children. In 2026, as they navigate their divorce, the embryos are no longer just a medical hope. They are a legal and ethical battleground. Sarah wants the right to use the embryos to become a parent, while James, citing a change in his life vision, wants them destroyed or donated to research to avoid a lifetime of unwanted parental obligations. In the past, this would be a chaotic legal gray area. But Sarah has been studying a specialized module at an online divorce academy called Biolegal Asset Management. The step-by-step detail of this curriculum is rigorous. Step 1 is the consent audit. Sarah is taught to go back to the original medical intake forms from the fertility clinic. In 2026, these forms have become the primary contracts that judges look to. The course teaches her how to identify specific clauses regarding the disposition of material in the event of a divorce. Step 2 is the constitutional argument strategy. Students are taught to frame the argument not just as a contract dispute, but as a fundamental right to procreate versus the right to avoid procreation. Sarah is coached to present evidence of her diminishing reproductive window, turning her biological clock into a quantifiable data point for the court. Step 3 is the genetic privacy shield. This involves securing the raw data files from the genome sequencing company to ensure James cannot unilaterally delete or sell the data to third-party research firms. Historical trends show a massive spike in embryo-related litigation in the United States over the last 24 months. Courts are moving away from treating embryos as property and toward a special respect status, which allows for more judicial discretion. Online divorce universities have responded by creating databases of every embryo-related ruling in the U.S., allowing students like Sarah to see exactly which arguments have moved the needle in their specific state. They provide case studies of balance of interest tests, where a judge weighs the emotional and biological investment of each party to determine the potential outcomes of the case. But the biological battle goes even further into the realm of personal genomic data. In 2026, your DNA is a valuable asset. It can be used for personalized medicine, insurance actuarial modeling, and even targeted advertising. If a couple has undergone extensive genetic testing during their marriage, who owns that data? Does the spouse have a right to a copy of your genetic markers to assess the risk factors for their children? Divorce University teaches a step-by-step process for genetic decoupling. This includes revoking shared access to ancestry platforms, subpoenaing the raw data from health tech companies, and implementing genetic non-disclosure agreements that prevent an ex-spouse from ever sharing or utilizing your biological data for commercial or legal gain. Let's consider an imagine-if scenario involving the commercialization of the family brand. Imagine a couple who built a successful mommy and daddy vlogging channel, where their children's genetic traits, perhaps a rare eye color or a specific athletic predisposition, were the core of their marketing. In 2026, the right of publicity for a family's DNA is a recognized legal concept. If the marriage ends, the online university teaches the student how to value the genetic brand. They use algorithmic tools to project the future earnings of that specific genetic lineage in the creator economy. This is a cold mathematical approach to the most intimate parts of human existence, but it is the only way to ensure an equitable distribution in a world that values data above all else. Step by step, the curriculum also addresses the post-mortem procreation clauses. Some students are learning how to secure rights to a spouse's genetic material, even after the divorce is finalized, in the event of an untimely death. This involves navigating the complex web of intent-based parentage laws that are currently sweeping through states like New York and California. The online platforms provide templates for biostorage trusts, which are legal entities designed to hold and protect genetic material until a final court order is issued, preventing either party from taking impulsive action. The cultural shift here is a move toward biological sovereignty. Americans are being taught that their body is not just their temple. It is their most valuable piece of intellectual property. Divorce University provides the tools to defend that property with the same ferocity one would use for a bank account or a home. Case studies from 2025 highlight the emergence of DNA forensics in divorce, where one spouse uses genetic data to prove or disprove paternity, or even to argue that a spouse's genetic predisposition to certain behaviors should influence custody arrangements. This is a terrifying level of scrutiny, and the online academies are the only institutions providing the defensive scripts to counter these biological attacks. Furthermore, we must discuss the bioethics of mediation. As algorithms take over the financial side of divorce, human mediators are being pushed more into these complex biological and ethical disputes. Online divorce schools are now training a new breed of biomediator, individuals who understand both the medical science of IVF and the legal nuances of the 2026 Domestic Code. They use a step-by-step ethical weighting process to help couples reach a compromise that avoids a public trial. This might involve an agreement where one spouse keeps the embryos but waives all future child support, or where genetic data is placed in a blind trust for the children to access once they reach the age of 18. As we look at the complexity of the DNA custody battle, we realize that the American family is being deconstructed at the molecular level. Divorce University is the laboratory where this deconstruction is being managed. But as we move into the next part of this masterclass, we have to look at how these biological and digital battles are affecting the most vulnerable participants in this system: the children. We are going to explore the rise of child-centric algorithmic parenting and how online universities are teaching parents to use AI to manage shared custody logistics without ever having to speak to their ex-spouse. We will look at the virtual visitation protocols and the emergence of AI-monitored parenting time. If you think you can just wing it as a co-parent in 2026, you are ignoring the data-driven surveillance that is now the standard for the modern American custody arrangement. We are moving from the courtroom to the smart home hub, and the rules of engagement are being written in code. The shift from the courtroom to the smart home hub represents the final frontier of the domestic dissolution process. In 2026, co-parenting has moved away from the emotional volatility of face-to-face handoffs and into the realm of algorithmic parenting. This is a specialized track within the Divorce University system, known as frictionless co-parenting systems. The core philosophy here is simple. If the parents cannot communicate without conflict, the technology will communicate for them. We are seeing the widespread adoption of AI-managed parenting schedules that adjust in real time based on traffic data, work calendars, and school activities. This isn't just a digital calendar. It is an autonomous coordinator that acts as a neutral third party, removing the human element from the logistical grind of shared custody. Imagine a mother in Seattle named Chloe and a father in Bellevue named Michael. They have a high conflict history, previously required a court-appointed coordinator costing $300 an hour. In 2026, they have replaced that human with an integrated AI parenting interface. When Michael's flight is delayed by 2 hours, he doesn't text Chloe, a move that in the past would have triggered a 3-day argument. Instead, the airline data automatically syncs with the parenting app. The AI analyzes Chloe's schedule, finds a window of availability, sends her a notification to extend her parenting time by 2 hours, and automatically credits Michael that time during the following weekend. The system then updates the school's authorized pickup list and notifies the children's wearable devices of the change. This is the step-by-step automation of domestic peace. The Divorce University curriculum for algorithmic parenting begins with system integration. Students are taught how to link their legal parenting plans to these software platforms. Step 1 is data onboarding, where the students input the specific parameters of their court order, bedtimes, geographic boundaries, and dietary restrictions. Step 2 is the conflict-free communication protocol. This involves setting up filters that flag aggressive language in messages and suggest alternative, professional phrasing before the message can be sent. Step 3 is the verifiable log. Every interaction, every location ping, and every schedule change is recorded in a tamper-proof ledger that can be exported directly for judicial review. Historical trends show that when parents know an AI is monitoring the tone and timing of their interactions, the instance of litigation-worthy conflict drops by over 60%. Case studies in 2026 are also highlighting the rise of AI-monitored parenting time. In situations where supervised visitation is required, the traditional model involved a social worker sitting in the corner of a room. Today, Divorce University is training parents on how to utilize virtual supervision hubs. These are AI-driven camera systems that use sentiment analysis to monitor the quality of the parent-child interaction. If the AI detects high levels of stress in the child's voice or inappropriate topics of conversation being introduced by the parent, it can provide real-time prompts to the parent to de-escalate or, in extreme cases, pause the session for review. This allows for a more natural environment for the child, while maintaining a level of oversight that is far more granular than a human could provide. Step by step, these online platforms are also teaching parents how to navigate the digital mirroring of the child's life. In a two-household system, consistency is the primary metric for child success. The online curriculum teaches parents how to sync the smart home settings in both houses. If a child has a specific lighting and white noise routine for sleep in House A, the AI ensures that House B reflects that exact environment. They use shared digital health records to ensure that medication dosages, caloric intake, and even screen time limits are identical across both residences. This level of synchronization reduces the transition stress that children of divorce historically faced, creating a singular, unified digital environment that spans two physical locations. But we must also address the surveillance trap. As we integrate more tech into parenting, we are creating a data-rich environment that can be weaponized in future legal disputes. Divorce University includes a mandatory module on data privacy for minors. This teaches parents how to prevent their ex-spouse from using a child's wearable data to track their own movements. For example, if a mother takes the children to a location the father disapproves of, and the father uses the child's smartwatch GPS to prove it in court, we enter a territory of secondary surveillance. The online curriculum provides the step-by-step detail on how to set up digital fences that protect the privacy of the parent while maintaining the safety of the child. Historical trends in the US show that the legal definition of best interests of the child is being redefined by these data sets. In 2026, a parent might walk into court with a consistency report generated by their parenting app, showing that they have maintained a 99% adherence rate to the children's routine over the last 12 months. This is a powerful objective metric that a judge can easily understand. It moves the conversation away from character witnesses and toward empirical evidence of stability. The potential outcome is a more meritocratic custody system, but one that demands a high level of digital literacy from the parents. Furthermore, we are seeing the emergence of virtual visitation as a primary legal standard. For parents who live in different states, the 2026 model has moved far beyond a simple FaceTime call. Divorce University is teaching parents how to use virtual reality or VR spaces to maintain a shared reality. This might involve a father in New York and a daughter in California meeting in a VR environment to build a digital Lego set or watch a movie together in a simulated living room. The curriculum walks parents through the technical setup, the psychological benefits of co-presence, and how to include these VR sessions as a formal part of the legal parenting time agreement. But what happens when the child grows up in a world where their parents only communicate through an algorithm? This is the core psychological question of the 2026 cultural shift. While the technology reduces conflict, it also sanitizes the human experience of resolution. Divorce University has had to add human-centric bridge modules, teaching parents how to eventually move away from the algorithm and toward healthy, unmediated communication. They teach the incremental trust model, a step-by-step process where parents slowly disable the AI filters as their communication improves, rewarding positive behavior with more autonomy. Case studies show that the most successful graduates of these systems are those who use the technology as a training wheel, not a permanent crutch. They use the AI to establish the habits of professionalized parenting, with the goal of eventually becoming self-sovereign co-parents. This is the ultimate goal of the Divorce University Online, to make the legal system and the technology itself unnecessary through the application of radical, data-driven education. As we reach the final chapters of this masterclass, we have to look at the broader societal impact. We have deconstructed the law, the finances, the biology, and the parenting of the American divorce. But what does the post-divorce society actually look like? In the final part of this series, we are going to look at the new American family structure that is emerging from the ashes of the traditional nuclear model. We will explore the rise of co-living pods for divorced parents, the emergence of multi-parental legal contracts, and the terrifying reality of the permanent divorce economy. If you think this is the end of the story, you are wrong. We are just at the beginning of the remarriage revolution, where the lessons learned in Divorce University are being applied to create a new, more resilient type of marriage, or perhaps something else entirely. We are going to look at the beta test marriage and the sunsetting contract. The rules of love in 2026 are being rewritten by the people who learned how to leave. The landscape of American companionship in 2026 has been fundamentally altered by the graduates of the digital divorce movement. Having deconstructed the traditional marriage to its barest legal and financial bones, a new generation of Americans is refusing to re-enter the institution under the old terms. We are now seeing the emergence of what sociologists call the intentional union, or the marriage of expertise. The cultural shift has moved from a romantic ideal to a structural partnership. This is where the curriculum of Divorce University comes full circle, evolving from a guide on how to leave into a blueprint for how to stay, but in a way that the legal system of 1950 wouldn't recognize. Imagine a couple in Austin named Derek and Maya. Both are in their early 40s, and both have successfully navigated high-asset divorces using online masterclasses. When they decide to build a life together in 2026, they don't head to the courthouse for a standard marriage license. Instead, they draft what is known as a beta test marriage contract. This is a time-bound legal agreement, often spanning 2 to 5 years, that outlines specific performance metrics for the relationship. It includes a sunsetting clause, which dictates that the partnership automatically dissolves on a specific date unless both parties actively vote to renew it. This shifts the default state of the relationship from permanent to temporary, forcing a continuous, conscious choice to remain together. The step-by-step detail of the beta test marriage is becoming a standard module in post-divorce education. Step 1 is the financial baseline. Derek and Maya establish a clear boundary between pre-existing assets and communal growth. They use the same forensic auditing tools they learned in Divorce University to create a digital ledger of their separate estates. Step 2 is the behavioral covenant. This isn't about chores, it is about communication standards. They agree to use the same AI-driven conflict resolution tools that managed their previous co-parenting arrangements. Step 3 is the milestone audit. Every 6 months, they conduct a domestic review, assessing the health of the partnership against their initial goals. If the data shows a decline in shared satisfaction or financial stability, the contract provides a pre-negotiated exit ramp that bypasses the courtroom entirely. Historical trends show that this modular approach to commitment is gaining traction among the American middle class. The fear of another 10-year legal battle has made the traditional, open-ended marriage contract appear high risk. By applying the principles of Divorce University to the beginning of a relationship, Derek and Maya are practicing preventative law. They are essentially pre-divorcing their marriage so that they never have to actually divorce. The potential outcomes of this trend include a dramatic reduction in the duration of domestic litigation and a rise in more resilient, transparent unions. Furthermore, we are seeing the rise of co-living pods as a solution to the post-divorce housing crisis. In major U.S. cities, the cost of maintaining 2 separate households after a split is often the primary driver of poverty. In 2026, groups of divorced parents are using online platforms to form intentional communities. Imagine a large, renovated apartment complex in Denver where 4 divorced families live in separate wings but share a central kitchen, a play area, and a professional-grade childcare staff. This is the multi-parental legal contract in action. These pods use shared equity models to keep housing costs low, while maintaining a high level of stability for the children. Divorce University now offers modules on the legal architecture of these pods, teaching students how to draft inter-family bylaws that cover everything from guest policies to shared grocery budgets. This cultural shift is also giving birth to the permanent divorce economy. We are moving away from a one-time transactional legal event toward a subscription-based model of domestic management. In 2026, you don't just finish a divorce. You maintain your status as a liberated individual through ongoing education and digital tools. There are now subscription services that provide monthly forensic audits of your ex-spouse's child support obligations, AI-driven parenting coaches that refine your communication every week, and networking clubs for legacy graduates of Divorce University. These individuals view their divorce not as a scar, but as a credential. They have survived the machine, mastered the data, and emerged with a level of domestic literacy that the average person lacks. Let's look at an imagine-if scenario where the American tax code catches up to this reality. Imagine if, by 2027, the IRS introduces a new household category that allows for the filing of these multi-parental pods or beta test unions. This would represent the final institutional validation of the Divorce University movement. We are already seeing pilot programs in certain municipalities that offer property tax breaks for co-living pods that provide verified stability for minors. The step-by-step process for qualifying for these breaks involves submitting the very consistency reports and verifiable life logs that students are currently learning to generate. The depth of this transformation cannot be overstated. We are witnessing the professionalization of the American family. The online university model has taken the most chaotic, emotional, and destructive event in a person's life and turned it into a manageable, data-driven process. While some critics argue that this strips the soul out of human connection, others point to the historical trends of domestic violence, poverty, and childhood trauma that the old system failed to prevent. In 2026, the informed litigant is choosing the cold clarity of the algorithm over the warm uncertainty of a broken promise. As we conclude this deep dive masterclass, we must reflect on the broader implication: the democratization of the law. For the first time in American history, the high-level strategies of the elite are available to anyone with an internet connection and the discipline to learn. The divorce university is more than just a school. It is a catalyst for a new type of social contract. It is a world where I do is followed by for now, and here is the data to prove it. We have explored the rise of the digital gatekeepers, the forensic audits, the biological custody battles, and the AI-driven parenting of the future. But there is one final question that remains. As we perfect the art of the exit, what happens to the art of the stay? If the exit is so seamless, so efficient, and so well-educated, will we ever find the value in the messy, unscripted work of traditional reconciliation? Or have we reached a point in American culture where the only way to save the family is to reinvent it from the ground up, one module at a time? The journey doesn't end with the decree. It ends with a new way of living. We have covered the emergence of divorce university online in America, but the global narrative is just beginning to unfold. In our next series, we will pull back the curtain on the global custody paradox, how international digital identities are clashing with ancient territorial laws. We will look at the rise of the sovereign child and the legal battle for the rights of the first generation born into the permanent divorce economy. If you thought the internal battle was over, you haven't seen the world that these new families are building. The blueprint is already being downloaded. The next phase of human domesticity is loading. Stay tuned.